I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love.
Well, this morning we're considering the story of Rhoda, and that may or may not be a name that's familiar to you. She appears in a story with Peter, and so you probably remember the story when you get into it, but you may not have focused much on Rhoda. And we're going to focus on Rhoda this morning, and particularly no one listening part, because Rhoda was talking and nobody was listening. So let's talk about the hearing and listening for a moment. Distinction between hearing and listening. It's pretty clear, but I just want us to think about it. The difference between hearing and listening, what is the difference?
It's what husbands do when their wives are talking. They hear it, but they don't really listen.
Sort of walked into that one, didn't I? It does happen on occasion, doesn't it? Yes. But it does happen with couples. It happens. In fact, I have a couple of cartoons with Calvin and Hobbes. You know, I like Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin running through the house, and of course, mother yelling, stop running through the house and all that. And then when he crashes and makes everything break, what did I tell you? And Calvin's response is, what, you weren't listening either? The kids don't listen to the parents. And Calvin's response is classic. But anyway, another one very quickly is Calvin is throwing out all kinds of garbage. I'm going to be a radical terrorist. I'm going to sniff this can of pesticide. I'm going to do all this weird stuff. And Mom's response is just, And parents do that. Your parents did it to you, and you probably have done it to other children. And then Calvin says, I'm going to watch TV all night. And Mom's response is instantaneous. That's what you think, Buster? And he says, you just never know when they're listening. But that's the way children and parents operate. We listen selectively. The words kind of flow, and we hear the noises, but we kind of filter through it and listen to some of it and don't listen to other parts of it. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my youth, and you can probably think back to your youth, at the earliest part of your youth that you can remember. And in that time, how much quieter things were. Now, we grew up out in the country, and a long time ago. Our first car that I can remember, there wasn't even a radio in the car.
Did it have an engine?
Not my day, is it? Yeah, it was not a Fred Flintstone mobile where we had to pedal it. It did have an engine, but did not have a radio. And in the house, of course, this was pre-television, so there wasn't any television going all the time. And in the summer, in particular, through much of the year, 6 months of the year, in the evening, we were outside the house, sitting on the patio, talking. And when the parents were talking, our little ears were tuned in to what they were, even if they were just talking to one another. We heard everything they said, and we were listening. Now, in a typical household, with the TV going and things going on, and the games on the iPads and all this other stuff going on, kids don't listen to what the parents are saying. So you just don't hear any of that. Anyway, so things are different now. A lot of noise in our lives. And it's not just with kids, it's with us too. With all the sounds that are bombarding us, you can't listen to every sound that hits you all the time. You just can't do it. In our culture today, there are too many sounds. So we have to be selective. And that's what the listening is, isn't it? It's taking those sounds and bringing them in and deciding what you're going to do with that sound that you've heard. I evaluate it and decide how I'm going to use it. That's listening. Now, you can sit in Sunday school, you can sit in church, you can sit anywhere and not listen. The sounds just kind of roll on by. Or you can listen. So we're going to talk about listening. Older couple in the house, and one of the problems when the hearing starts to go and we're not listening carefully is the communications start to break down. Communications between two people will break down if we're not listening to one another. Aging, problem with hearing a little bit. So the old man was concerned about his wife's hearing. So she was sitting in the family room reading a book, and he was about 25 feet away. So he thought, well, I'm going to test her hearing. So he says, "Can you hear me?" Just in a normal tone of voice. No response. So he goes a little closer and he says, "Can you hear me?" No response. He goes a little closer. He says, "Can you hear me?" No response. Finally, he gets right behind her chair and says, "Can you hear me?" And she says for the fourth time, "Yes." But as we age, the hearing problem contributes to the listening problem, which contributes to the communication problem. Why is it so difficult to listen to another person? Obviously, we have trouble with it because we don't do it very well.
There are some people that are just really hard to listen to. Depends on the subject.
Depends on the subject. There are lots of people that's difficult to listen to about some things.
Yeah, I work with a couple that just know everything there is, know about everything. Just tune them out.
What other reasons might we have for tuning people out, not listening to somebody?
Thinking about something themselves.
We think about our own thoughts, and so we're kind of focused on self. We don't want to hear what they have to say. What else?
Gerald, I think one thing we are prone to want to call. We sometimes are waiting for someone to end what they're saying so we can say what we want to say. And I've been there where you're just waiting.
We all do that. We all do that, don't we? Instead of listening to what they are saying, we're planning what we are going to say.
But by the time we get through, I've forgotten what it was.
That's right. We find it difficult many times to listen, really listen to the other person. We're more interested in getting our ideas expressed than we are in hearing theirs.
Gerald, and I think it's because in our vanity, we think that what we're saying is so much more, not really bigger than what we think.
Not only interesting, but important. So we have a problem in that communication process because we're not good listeners. It is not our nature to be a good listener. Good listening requires a great deal of effort. Going back to what we said earlier, particularly in this culture today with all the noise. I mean, with all the sounds that are bombarding you and all the people who are wanting to talk to you and give you all this wisdom, it's just not easy to listen. And we don't do it very well. What about with God? How good are we at listening to God? Not very. Why is that? Why is it so difficult for us to listen to God?
One reason is we won't be quiet long enough.
I think one of the reasons, Gerald, that we listen to God, and that we don't think we can measure up.
We don't want to hear what he has to say because it is going to be difficult. And because of that difficulty, we have a tendency to not really want to hear from him.
And Gerald, doesn't that sometimes show what our concept of God that he's going to ask us to do something we don't want to do instead of saying we might like.
And it might be something that we need to do whether we want to or not. So yes, we put constraints on him. We're not that eager in general to listen to him. And if we have so much trouble listening to another human being who's standing right there before us and talking to us, doesn't it seem that it might be even more difficult to listen to God speaking to us? Because if he's speaking through another human being, that's really a double challenge now. And if he's speaking in some other way to us, that's still an even greater challenge. But why is it so easy to listen to the devil?
He's usually telling you what you want to hear.
Ah, yeah, he's going to give you the stuff that sounds good, right? This is going to be fun. So yeah, we'll go that path. we're kind of eager to go down that road. That sounds pretty good. Spiritual growth. How does our listening affect our spiritual growth? As if we don't listen or if we do listen, what's the impact upon our spiritual growth? And by spiritual growth, that is becoming more like Christ, as being conformed to His image, being like Him. If we are not good listeners, how likely is it that we are going to find ourselves becoming more and more like Jesus? Not very likely. So it is a necessary condition. That is, it is necessary for us to be good listeners, to be quiet and listen. I don't think we're going to go down this path later, so let me go ahead and make one suggestion. In our prayers, how much of our prayer time is spent telling God what to do, and how much is listening to Him? That alone might give us an indication as to how good we are at listening, just in our prayers. How would you feel if virtually no one listened to you? Now, there are probably people who have that feeling, and maybe there are people who actually are in that situation where virtually no one listens to them. There may be some people in nursing homes and places like this where nobody listens. But how would you feel if nobody listened to you? Nobody who would look you in the eye as you spoke and responded to what you said? Unimportant. How motivated to live would you be? I mean, would you want to live a life where no one would listen to you? Not likely. So what do we do when people aren't listening? We do something to get their attention. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. What will children do if they don't feel that their parents are giving them the attention that they feel that they need at the moment? Could be disastrous, couldn't it? They're willing to go for some pretty far boundaries to get that attention, to get somebody to listen to them. Well, we're the same way. But when you know that what you have to say is important and that it's true, you know that what you have is the truth and that it is important, how are you going to react if the people are not listening to you? What are you going to do? You have something to say, it's important to say it, and it's true. They're not listening. What are you inclined to do? What's the natural reaction?
You speak softer or speak louder.
Either speak softer or louder, softer to the point of just saying no more. I give up. I tried to tell you, you fool, you didn't listen, and I give up. You're on your own.
That's you say, you listen to me?
Or, on the other hand, we can get argumentative about it, can't we? I said, again, you fool, why aren't you listening? This is important. You have to know this. Will either of those work? Will either of those be effective? Not really. Maybe in some rare circumstances they might, but in general those things don't work. But if you know that you have something that's important to say and that it is true, do you have an obligation to persist in what you are proclaiming? Well, that's sort of the question of the day as we look at the story of Rhoda. The clip is from The Wonder Years. Now, this is a TV series that ran for, 6 years or so. Actually, it was one of my favorite shows. I really enjoyed it because it dealt with family and lots of different issues. And this was, the setting was back in the late 60s and early 70s, so a tumultuous time in this country. And they dealt with some of those tumultuous issues in a very fair way, I think, in most situations. But the focus is on family through the whole thing. So it's a good family show. Kevin is the young man who's at the heart of the show. In this particular episode, Kevin and his mother, Norma, his father, and his brother. And they're going to Norma's high school reunion. I'm going to show you two scenes, one from the beginning of the show, one from the end of the show. It's very interesting the way they develop this because it's about listening. So let's take a look.
In the spring of 1973, the Arnold family took to the skies. Not that we ventured into the friendly skies without a reason. we were on our way home. Well, Mom's home.
It'll be fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, the
Yeah.
captain's turned off the seat.
After all, this was more than just a trip back in time. We were headed home to family.
Are we there yet?
Mom's family. Homecoming at the grandparents'.
Wayne.
We saw them, about once every century.
Hi! How's everybody?
Maybe there was a reason.
Why don't we come on inside? You must be exhausted from your trip. Come on, come on.
Maybe it was Dad.
Well, better get that luggage inside before some of the local kids make off with it.
Nothing's too good for my little girl. Mom.
Say this for the oldsters, they loved their only daughter, if not their only son-in-law.
This is perfect.
What's wrong with you?
And that just about did it.
Me? What's wrong with me?
It was time to tell him exactly how I...
I hate this place.
Yeah, that was it. In a nutshell.
What's so funny?
You're starting to sound just like your mother.
What?
You heard me.
Yeah, but Mom loves this place.
Yeah, for a day or two, maybe. Trust me. 21 years ago, she couldn't wait to get out.
You're kidding.
Nah. Your mother wanted a lot more from life than a small town like this had to offer.
So why didn't you tell Grandma and Grandpa about it? She never says a word.
She used to. They couldn't hear her. Parents are like that sometimes. How was it?
It was fine. But when the invitation comes for my 30th reunion,
Yeah?
let's tear it up.
So how was the dance?
Actually, it was a little boring.
But you had a good time.
After all, maybe there are some things in life that just can't be changed. A child's hopes, a parent's dreams.
Well, good night, everyone.
Thanks.
And maybe, when it comes to families, that's all for the best.
But I don't know if it's for the best or not, but families do have a problem hearing one another. But it's not just families, it's individuals too. It's friends, it's neighbors, it's everybody else. That the dreams and hopes that we have and all these other things that get in the way, but we just have a problem listening to one another. We just have a problem hearing. That's just like Norma's parents couldn't hear her when she was a teenager. The mother couldn't hear her 25 years later. And we all have that problem. We all have that problem of being able to listen and to hear exactly what's being said. And let's go to our story of Rhoda. And Rhoda has the problem of no one listening. Rhoda's going to have something important to say, and nobody is listening to Rhoda. They hear the noises coming out of her mouth, but they're not taking it in. Acts chapter 12, verse 1. The king is Herod. We're in Jerusalem. Herod is the king. This is the grandson of the Herod who was king when Jesus was born. So this is the grandson of that Herod. You saw King Herod in the beginning of Jesus' life, and now approximately 15 years after his crucifixion and his resurrection and his ascension, we're back again in Jerusalem, and there's a King Herod on the throne, just not the same king. It's his grandson. Herod's on the throne. He's as bad as his grandfather was, and he demonstrates his badness by laying violent hands on members of the church. So the church of Christ that remained in Jerusalem at this point, 15 years later, many of the church had been driven out. They left Jerusalem because of the persecution in Jerusalem. But for the church that remains, he's laying violent hands upon the church. It is a dangerous place to be. Verse 2, James, brother of John, murdered by Herod. Herod had James murdered. Well, it's not a safe place for the church. He takes Peter, has Peter arrested and thrown into prison. Now, if you are a member of the church in Jerusalem at this particular time, how safe do you feel? You're not going to feel safe at all because you could be next. What's he going to do with Peter? He's thrown Peter into jail. He has guards around him. And the way they would guard him, they would have two chained to him, one on each side, and they would have two guards at the door. Groups of 4 guards, and they would rotate through shifts. Every 6 hours, a new shift would come on. 2 guards chained to him, 2 guards at the door. What's the plan? What are you going to do with him? Well, this happens to be during the Passover, which happens to remind us of something about 15 years prior, when Jesus was in Jerusalem for those last days. But anyway, this is the time of the Passover, so they're not going to do anything during the Passover. But as soon as the Passover is over, what do you expect them to do with Peter? Kill him. Kill him. So if you're a member of the church in Jerusalem and you know that Peter's been arrested and you're expecting Peter to be executed shortly, not a very pleasant situation. The danger in Jerusalem at this point is great for everybody who is a Christian. So when he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. Peter's kept in prison. What's the church doing? The church is praying. Peter's kept in prison. The earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. If you are a member of the church in Jerusalem and you're all congregating together and you're praying for Peter, what kinds of things are you going to pray for? Peter is in prison, about to be executed by the king who's already executed James, the brother of John. What are you going to pray for?
God to save him.
Save him? All right. How else might people be praying for him?
God will give him the strength to endure all of it.
Strength to endure whatever's going to come to him, including death. It looks likely that he's going to die. So you want Peter to be strong to the end. So you're likely to pray that Peter will have that strength to the end. Do you really expect him to come out of the prison? Be honest with you. You've read the story. You know the story. Forget the story for a moment. Your friend, your fellow believer is in prison guarded by these guards, held by the king who is killing Christians. Do you expect Peter to come out? Probably not. If you're honest about it, you probably don't. So you're more likely to be praying that in fact he's going to remain strong to the end, that he will be strong and not be faint-hearted as he faces death for being a Christian. The church is praying. Is there any risk for these people gathering together and praying? There certainly is. It's not like us coming into the church here or even meeting in our homes and praying in our homes. At this particular time, to be a Christian is very dangerous. And to gather together in the middle of the night, this is dangerous. And we have to appreciate that danger. So now what's going to happen? The miraculous happens. The unexpected happens. What we may have been praying for those of us who were bold enough to pray that Peter would be set free. And there probably would not have been very many of us with that kind of boldness in our prayer. But for those of us who were bold enough, it's about to happen. Peter's sleeping between the 2 guards, and an angel appears. An angel appears. If you have been in deep sleep and somebody wakes you up in the darkness, how alert are you? If I'm in the darkness and a stranger awakens me, I'm in the prison beside 2 guards, a stranger awakens me, and how quickly am I going to really come to grips with all this? Probably not very quickly. I mean, you may be fast, and I'll let you be that. I'm not going to be that fast. If that angel is going to awaken me while I'm asleep between those 2 jailers, I'm not so sure that I'm going to understand what's going on. Peter did not understand what was going on. The angel wakes him up. The chains fall off. The guards continue to sleep. The angel says, "Get up, get dressed, follow me." And they walk to the door, and the door swings open. The guards outside the door are asleep, and they walk out. Would it occur to you, maybe this is a dream? If you were Peter, would it occur to you that maybe I'm dreaming? That's probably pretty likely for most of us. This is unreal, isn't it? Have you seen anything like that? You haven't. I haven't. That's unreal. And if that were happening to me, I would have to wonder, am I imagining this? Am I dreaming this? Or is this real? Well, finally, Peter finds himself standing outside. I mean, he's out there in the cool night air. It's not a dream. But he did not know the kingdom of the angel was real. He thought he might be seeing a vision. But it finally comes to him that this is real. If you're Peter, are you saved now? You're outside the prison. You're not shackled to any guards. You're free. Are you really free? You're in worse shape than you were before, aren't you? Because not only are you guilty of whatever Herod may have thought you were guilty of, now you're an escaped prisoner, aren't you? You're an escapee. If the guards find you now, if the guards were to wake up right now, step outside, find you standing outside, what would they do with you? If you were the guard and you found this prisoner outside, what would you do to him? You'd beat him up a bit, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd beat on him a lot because you'd want him to realize, boy, you don't do this to me. Why would you do that if you were the guard? Your life is in danger. You as the guard are responsible for that prisoner. In fact, these guards end up losing their lives. These guards are killed because Peter got away. So if those guards come out and find Peter, they're going to beat him within an inch of his life so that Herod can have him killed. Finish the job. Peter's still in danger. On verse 11, there's one thing I found interesting in this verse I wanted to point out. Peter said, now I'm sure the Lord sent this angel and he brought me out of the prison to escape from the hand of Herod. And, if it stopped right there, we could be happy. He understands what's happened. But notice what else it says. It says, and from all that the Jewish people were expecting. What were the Jewish people expecting? He's going to be executed. So he has been saved from that the Jewish people have been expecting. What has the church been expecting? The church has been expecting the same thing, right? I mean, this is what's going to happen. He killed James, he's going to kill Peter. We are expecting him to die. And all that they were expecting, he's been taken away from that. Now you're Peter, you're standing out in the cold night air, all by yourself, an escaped prisoner. So what are you going to do? You're going to go join your friends. So that's what he does. He goes to the house of Mary, who's the mother of Mark, John Mark, the writer of the Gospel of Mark. The young man we meet in several places. Goes to Mary's house, which is where the church is meeting and praying. Now, wait a minute. We're in the wee hours of the morning. Peter had already gone to sleep in prison. He'd been put in prison, chained the guards, left in the cell. Peter's asleep, been asleep for a long time. He was in a deep sleep. The church is still praying. Notice the persistence here. Through the night, the church is praying for Peter. Is there any danger associated with that? Yes. Now, they didn't have patrol cars driving around the streets in those days. But if, perchance, a Roman soldier happened to notice that there was a commotion going on in this particular house, and it was this church meeting, that would not be a good thing. But they're praying. They prayed through the night. So Peter goes and knocks on the door. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? When he got to the jailhouse door, what happened? It swung open. The jailhouse door opened. The angel left him after he got him outside. Peter's on his own. Peter now has to make some wise choices here, doesn't he? He goes to Mary's house, and the door doesn't swing open. See, God doesn't do everything for us, does he? He might want you to do something once in a while. He might have something for you to do.
In those cases, God did what Peter couldn't do.
That's right. So Peter's here. Peter can do this, can't he? Peter can knock on the door, and it's kind of keeps you a little bit on the humble side, doesn't it? Because you realize you're just human beings standing there at the door. Yes, an angel has rescued you, but he's not there doing everything for you as you go through everything that you do in your life. What you couldn't do, he did. You can do this, you better do it. Peter standing at the door knocking. Is Peter in danger while he's there, knocking on the door? Remember, every second he's standing at that door knocking, his risk is increasing. Because it's more and more likely those guards are going to wake up and find him missing and come looking. And the longer he's out there in the public, the greater the chance that he's going to get caught, and it's going to be even worse for him. He's standing there knocking. Now, a servant girl goes to answer the door. Rhoda. We meet Rhoda. This is Rhoda, a servant girl. In this house, you have the heart of the church in Jerusalem. Why would a servant girl go to answer the door? If you were inside, who could be at the door? Could be Roman soldiers. And I don't know that John was there, but let's suppose John went to the door and opened it up. Roman soldier might like to see John. He might have a place for John. So you can't have just anybody going to the door. There are really only two people, most likely, that could answer the door. It would be Mary herself, her house, or the servant. So it makes sense that the servant would answer the door. Larnell Harris did a song in the 1980s called Rhoda, and it was about this story. I was going to play it for you, but the lyrics are not distinct enough that you could understand that. The words are beautiful. It's a well-done song, if you can understand it clearly, but it's not clear enough that I could play it in here and you could listen to it and hear it, the words. So I didn't do that. But anyway, there's a song, Rhoda. Rhoda, open the door, girl. Open the door. You're going to find that she doesn't open the door. She recognizes Peter's voice and joy. She doesn't open the door. She runs back in and tells them. Is that a surprise? Is that a problem? I don't think so. I mean, some commentators talk about, well, this reason, that reason. If I'm in the church inside, do I want the servant girl opening the door? I want her to go there, and I want her to find out who's out there so we know kind of what we're dealing with. And then one of the adults should make the decision about who's going to come in and who's not coming in. But I don't think Rhoda would have the authority to open that door. Now, that's my personal opinion about the situation. And if I'm in the church inside, I would not want the servant girl deciding who's coming in and who's not. Anyway, Rhoda answers the door. She couldn't flip on the porch light, could she? The dark of night. Is she going to look Peter in the face? Not in the darkness. She recognizes his voice. She recognizes his voice. She knows Peter well. She recognizes the voice. And in joy, she believes that is Peter. She recognizes that voice. That's Peter out there. And in joy, she runs back in to tell the people, it's Peter at the door. It's Peter. And they said to her, you're out of your mind. Were they listening? The words came in. Sound waves hit their eardrums. But they weren't listening to her, were they? They were not valuing anything that she said. They assigned no value, no weight to her words. They're not listening. If someone comes to you, whether it's your child or a friend or somebody else comes to you and says something to you and you say you're out of your mind, are you listening to them? Those words mean nothing to you. The words that they gave you mean nothing to you.
It seems that if they were praying for his release, they didn't have the faith to do it.
Exactly. For those who were bold enough to pray for a miracle that Peter would be saved from this situation and be allowed to escape from that situation, for those people to say, no, that can't be Peter at the door, shows that they didn't believe what they were praying for. Do we pray like that? Does this describe the way we listen to God? That is, when the message finally comes to us, it's so unbelievable to us that we say, you're crazy. You're crazy. You're out of your mind.
It would be kind of hard to believe that the length of time has been in prison.
Absolutely, it's going to be hard to believe. But if we are bold enough to ask for that in prayer, we should be bold enough to expect the prayer to be fulfilled. And when it is fulfilled, we should rejoice all the more. Now, this is interesting. When you put the 15 and 16 together, what does Rhoda do? Rhoda keeps insisting that it's Peter at the door. When you know something is true, and you know that what you have to say is important, you must persist. Rhoda teaches us that lesson very clearly. She kept insisting, it is Peter at the door. I know that it is Peter at the door. What did the church do? They persisted as well. They kept saying, well, it's this or it's that. It's his angel. It's not him. What could it be? It could be one of the guards coming, knocking on the door. It could be somebody pretending to be Peter in order to get them to open the door so they can come in. Or it could be an angel. It could be a spirit of some sign. As some commentators say, it might be an evil spirit or a spirit just warning them that Peter's dead and it's all over, so forget it. Another one saying, well, no, he's alive, he's going to be okay, and your prayers will be answered. But they weren't saying it could be Peter. They're saying it's his angel. They persisted as well. And Peter continued to knock. Everybody's continuing to do what they're doing. The church needs to open the door. Open the door for Peter. But Peter continues to knock. The risk is still high for everybody involved. The risk is high for Peter. The risk is high for the people who are inside. There is danger for everyone involved here. Now notice who opened the door. They didn't send Rhoda back to open the door. They opened the door. And that's why, again, I believe that they're the ones who have the authority to open the door. Rhoda didn't have the authority to open the door. They have the authority to open the door. They finally decide they're going to open the door. They open the door, and lo and behold, there is Peter. And they're amazed that their prayers are filled. It is an amazing thing. It is a miraculous thing. God sent an angel to deliver Peter from that prison and brought him to them. The conclusion I have for this is from the Mount of Transfiguration, when Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration with Peter, James, and John, and Elijah and Moses on this mount, and Jesus is transfigured before them, and they hear the voice of God. And what did God say? This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to him. We are to listen to him. That's how we're going to grow spiritually. That's how we're going to be conformed to the image of Christ, is if we listen to him. But we have to shut out some noises. We have to pay attention, and we have to be still.
I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and his love.